Hi friends, this is Tina and welcome to my last Plan With Me video of the year. This year went by so fast and it feels so unreal that it's already the time for my December setup. My theme for December is winter animals and it was a huge challenge for me and you will see that very soon. But before we get into my new setup, let's just quickly flip through my November pages. As you can see, many of my pages are still partially empty here because I actually started to film this video super early. If you didn't watch my November Plan With Me video yet, I will link it in the cards and in the description down below. Before we start with my cover page, I wanted to show you the sketchbook page I made to prepare myself for my new theme. Some of the sketches were super fast and some I spent more time on, but this was necessary to do first, since I have never tried out painting or drawing more realistic animals before. So for my cover page, I chose to paint this little robin bird sitting on top of a branch with red berries and leaves. I painted the whole background with gouache, and for the berries I used vermilion and magenta and some black too. I didn't do anything too complicated here and I just painted the berries on top with a lighter color and ones that were behind them with a bit more black mixed in the red paint. I also added some masking fluid on top of my sketch of the branch. Since this theme has a lot of winter landscapes, I added in snow and the masking fluid was a super useful thing to add here so those spots would stay white even after painting the whole branch. I started painting the green leaves around the red berries. I chose this rounded shape and left a line in the middle uncolored. I painted the leaves behind and also on top of the berries to create a more interesting and more dimensional look. Keep in mind that everything I've painted here so far is just a base layer of the painting. I usually love to start my painting process with a base layer of color and the shape and then start to add more details and shadows on top. While painting this, I learned that maybe I should have mixed a bit more water for the green color first because I really like the look of a more translucent color and it was also a bit easier to create some shadows on top later. When the first layer was finished, I started to add more shadows and highlights to the greenery. I just used the same color I had already mixed for the leaves, but just added more white for the lighter color and black for the darker one. I painted the tip of the leaf with the light green shade and just used a bit of water to blend it to the darker color. I used black paint to darken the root of the leaf. I think the berries already looked pretty good, but I still wanted to intensify the contrast more, so I again took some lighter and also darker version of the red color and added them to the painting. I darkened those spots of the berries that were behind leaves or other berries, and for some I added some lighter highlights. For some berries on the top I painted these little darker dots. Once I was happy with the leaves and berries, I took a darker brown color and just painted the branch itself. I didn't add any details here, so this was just a fun and fast step of the painting process. The next step I did was painting the background. I made it super simple and just painted some snow with white gouache. Obviously, I mixed some different shades in it too, so it would actually stand out from the white background. I made the top part with this super light pinkish shade, and for the other ones I mixed more of a gray color. I still added some brown to all of these light shades to create a more warmer tone for the whole background. The only thing I added to these different blobs of snow was some darker color as shadow to the bottom of the blobs. For the two blobs of snow hanging from the branch, I made the areas that were behind the twig a bit darker. When I was finished with the whole background, I started to remove the masking fluid. When I was rubbing it off with my fingers, the red color of the berries started to smear to the white areas, but luckily I was able to just paint over it with my white gouache. Now that the whole background is painted, let's proceed to the actual main character, who is this cute robin. Now for this I actually chose watercolors. I only painted the base layer with watercolors though, and to be honest, I'm not even sure why I chose watercolors instead of gouache for all these animals this month, but it just felt somehow easier to handle. So I painted the neck and head with an orange color, mixed a really light beige color for the belly and brown for the wing and top of its head. After that, I took my gouache paints again and I started to paint these thin lines everywhere so the bird would look more fluffy. For the wings, I just took a darker color and started making these short strokes with my small liner brush. I also just added some occasional lighter shades pretty aimlessly. When I painted the belly, I mostly added some darker lines to the area below the wing and to the neck. I also took water to my brush and blended the lines a little bit to make it look a bit softer. I made sure to leave the center of the belly lighter in color and didn't add as much color in. I drew the eye of the bird with a black fineliner and made a tiny dot for it with a white gouache. I decided to paint the beak off screen because I kinda messed it up first and just ended up poking my head to the frame all the time, so it was easier to fix off camera. Lastly, I painted the legs for the bird with a dark brown color and just added some snow on top with white gouache. I positioned my camera to film my lettering for the header, but I forgot to press record and well, now you can only see me fixing some mistakes I made. But I just used a Pigma PN fineliner for the December header. And that's it for my December cover page. I was so scared to do this, but I'm happy it turned out so good. I love the colors and the peaceful feeling in this picture. So the next spread we're working on is my calendar spread. I wanted to paint this cute rabbit here, and I must say I was so scared to actually start painting on this. Like I said, I had really never tried painting more realistic animals, so this was a huge challenge. Again, I started with watercolors first to create the basic shapes and colors for everything. I know this bunny doesn't look very lively here yet. It definitely started to look better once I got to the gouache part. I was looking at a picture of a rabbit and applied my colors as similarly as possible to my reference picture. For example, the nose was the lightest part, so I left it very light. While I paint this, I want to talk about this theme a little bit. First of all, I'm sorry to disappoint any of you who would have liked to see a Christmassy theme or some Christmas spreads. I celebrate Christmas, but I don't really need any planning spreads for that, nor do I want to look at a Christmas theme in my bullet journal for the whole month of December. I'm not the biggest Christmas fan, so I'm way happier with this winter theme that still fits perfectly for December. I'm that person who enjoys Christmas on Christmas Eve, and that's pretty much it. I still appreciate the aesthetics, but not in my own personal life. This theme is also all over the place. Since my theme is winter animals and I mostly wanted to focus on the animal part of that, pretty much all of my spreads look different style and color-wise. I wanted to overall have this peaceful winter vibe, but it went from very soft to very dark colors and back, so yeah, it's not my most cohesive monthly theme, but I still really enjoyed creating these spreads, and I also think I found that more uniform style for paintings in the end, and I'm trying to keep that up for my weeklies as well. After I painted the base colors with my watercolors, I took some gouache to paint the rabbit's fur. Even though the base colors were super unsaturated and light, the gouache shades I chose were vibrant and, like I said in the beginning, made this painting more alive. I left the eye area lighter and added darker colors to, for example, above the nose and to the top of its head. I think the blending with water part was my best friend while creating this monthly theme because especially the fur just looks super harsh at some point, so being able to combine the colors a bit and making them more translucent and not so sharp made the fur look smoother. I painted both of the eyes black and added a tiny white dot to the closer eye. I again used my tiny liner brush to create these thin black whiskers, and that was such a nerve-wracking part of this painting process for some reason. I think they ended up being a bit too thick in the end, so maybe a super small fine liner would have been a better option for that. I didn't really know what to do with the body. I just ended up doing some similar fur-like strokes everywhere, making the right side of its body darker. At the end, I feel like I maybe should have left it more simple and ditched the small lines, but it's done and it's okay. Even though I struggled a lot with my paintings and many of them didn't turn out like I had imagined or looked better in my head, I'm still so proud of myself for being able to paint these pictures with pretty much no experience at all and them turning out so good. I feel like this year has been the biggest year for learning for me, and I'm just so happy with the huge progress I've made and all the art that I've been able to create. I'm also just so happy I decided to take this opportunity to create my YouTube channel. I remember that once I thought it was impossible to create monthly videos with the huge amount of time it took to create my spreads, so I'm even more happy I'm here now filming videos. The last thing I added to this painting was this frosty grass I painted with a greenish-brown gouache. I painted some snow on top of them with white gouache and lastly just outlined the snow a bit with a black 005 fine liner so they would stand out from the white paper more. Before we set up the actual calendar for this spread, let me quickly remind you of this advent calendar painting tutorial video I shared on my channel a little while ago. If you want to create something Christmassy in your notebooks, I will link the video in the description and in the cards above so you can check it out. I made a super simple calendar here using some fine liners and a couple of acrylographs from Archer and Olive. I actually used both of these shades in my last theme as well. I don't have many sets and these are pretty much the only neutral tones I have and that's why I chose them again. I know I could have gone with like a red color, but I'm just so scared to use color sometimes. To the bottom of the page, I made little boxes for notes and a to-do list, and above the calendar I wrote December. And here's my calendar spread all done. As you can see, the vibe is a lot different from my cover page, but that's just what happens sometimes. I also want to hype this notebook up a bit because I was sure something would have bled through here after the excessive amount of water I used, but there's nothing. So this spread is for my mood and habit trackers. I ended up going with a super similar layout I've used a lot in the past. On the right side there's a circular painting, and on the left side I made this big painting that covers half of the whole page. I will draw lines representing my mood and hours slept around the circle painting, and my small calendar for the habit trackers will be next to the big painting. I painted a similar scene in both pages. It's this peaceful winter forest with bare trees and lots of snow. In the large painting, however, there's a deer on the forefront of the image while the smaller painting only has trees. There's a little snowy path and I wanted the light to come from the middle of the painting, so I painted the trees in the sides with darker brown and black colors, and they will get lighter the closer we get to the center. The first trees were pretty much black, and for the next one I added a bit more white again. I tried to mix some brown to the colors again to create a bit more warmer tone, but this ended up being a more cool tone spread in the end. I also darkened the trees on the sides that were closer to the edges of the painting to further show the direction of light. I changed my ways of filming a bit this month. I wanted to only film when it's light outside so I could get a nicer lighting in my videos, but sadly here in Finland we have such a limited amount of daylight now during winter that I had such hard time filming and editing this one. After 3 p.m. it's almost impossible to get enough light, so I had to film this video over 5 different days. So needless to say, I'm so happy to finally get this out. When I finished painting the tree trunks, I just took my permanent white gouache and started to add some snow to my trees. This was such a satisfying part of the process, but I was also scared I would add way too much of the gouache and ruin the whole thing. I mostly added the gouache to the bottom of the tree and the roots of my small branches to create these clumps of snow. I also just sprinkled some gouache on top of the painting to create even more snowy look. Then I proceeded to paint the deer on the left picture. If you are a total beginner but still want to try painting an animal, this definitely could be an easy and simple painting to try out. At least for me, who hasn't painted animals or people that much, faces are always the hardest part, so painting an animal from the back always makes it easier. I made the antlers very dark and especially darkened the root of it more. I also used darker color for the back of its head and added some small details to its ears. Then again, like in my other paintings, I went in with gouache and added more details to finish this deer painting. For the ground, I just took white gouache with a little bit of brown and black mixed in. I mostly added that to the front of the painting and I just painted the farthest point of the ground with pure white gouache. For the layout of the spread, I didn't do anything too interesting. I wrote mood tracker to the right side of the spread and drew borders for my habit trackers on the left page. My acrylograph marker was so dry that it took ages to actually color in the borders, but luckily I got there in the end. I feel like this layout turned to be a bit boring since I've used it so much in the past, but I hope I will be motivated to use it anyway. But the next spread we're flipping to is pretty much an identical spread from what I did last month. It's a simple memory spread with lots of different boxes, and I will write or draw something each day and just collect some memories from this month. I actually loved filling this up last month, so I had to include it here too. This is of course inspired by the amazing Monday Morning Design, or Viv, whose Instagram account I will link in the description down below. That was just a fast spread to set up, and we can now go to the next one. The next spread is my content planner, and for it I just drew a bunch of boxes and a calendar to plan my posts for the month. This is one of those spreads again that didn't really go to plan. And by the way, I don't want to be super negative when I say that, it's just a reality of things sometimes, and painting is not always super easy. I painted a fox here, but for some reason I didn't notice that I made its ears a bit too big. This time I started with a more vibrant colored base layer and added more red to my orange color. I feel like I also just made the colors a bit too red. When I was sitting on my desk with my ring light on, the shade looked way lighter, but when I quit filming, it looked kind of crazy. Overall, the products I used for this whole theme were Winsor & Newton Cotman watercolors, some gouache tubes from Winsor & Newton and Royal Talens. For my brushes, I used detail brushes from Arteza and then just some random ones in different sizes. My notebook is a watercolor notebook from Mellow, and the pens I used were some Pigma Microns and Archer & Olive Acrylographs. All of the products I used for this theme are listed in the description along with all my discount codes and socials. I was looking at my fox reference picture and I was especially focused on the fur and the direction of it, so I tried to take that into consideration when adding these lines with gouache. I feel like I've done the same thing in every painting, so I might as well talk about something else too. Since it's soon December, do you celebrate Christmas, and whatever you celebrate, what are your plans? Christmas is usually celebrated on Christmas Eve here in Finland, so we are going to my boyfriend's parents' house then, and the next day we'll go to my parents'. I don't really like presents, so I've pretty much said to everyone that I don't want any. I think I will also just buy 1 or 2 gifts. Since I'm a vegetarian and both of our families aren't, last year I made my own Christmas foods and spent so much time on them, but I think this year I would love to just order some good food for myself. I tried to add some whiskers for the fox, but it didn't really work out, so I ended up just covering it. I splattered some white paint on the fox and drew some snowflakes on it with white gouache. I again made the same snowy grass here as I did on my calendar page, but I used brown gouache to outline them instead of the fineliner. I did a similar header to what I used last month. I just did the first word of the header with a cursive font and then glued a piece of craft paper to write the word planner on top. I made this big calendar for a planner and made a super weird layout here when I put some of the boxes on the top row in half. I just thought that probably I have more to upload and things to do in the end of this month compared to the beginning, so this worked better for me. Below the calendar, I added boxes for to-dos and for any YouTube lists and notes. To the left page, I made some small boxes for notes and followers and a big box to track my posts and how they are performing. I also colored the headers for some of these boxes and used my acrylographs to make little dots for the days in the calendar. But let's get on to my next spread, and I'm actually not doing that painting in this video. I painted this winter for a scene here, but I decided that I would actually make a separate video out of that. I sometimes struggle with finding the time to create extra painting tutorials, and I know so many of you would like me to post those, so I think I found a way to do it without having to spend so much extra time on it. However, I don't know when that video is coming out. I have so much planned for this month, so it could come in January too. I created a super simple playlist page here on the other side. I cut these craft paper squares and glued album covers on top. I took my Moth wing colored acrylograph and just drew little borders for the page. I'm actually super happy with how this whole spread turned out, and I can't wait to upload the tutorial video for this painting later too. this is the last spread I worked on, and it's a Dutch door spread that actually has 2 weeklies in one. December has 5 weeks instead of 4, so I think that was a good choice and I'm able to save some more time too. Lately, I've done a lot of horizontal Dutch doors, so I decided to switch it up a bit with this vertical Dutch door. I first drew these circles for the days of the week and then just cut the page with a crafting knife pretty much in half while the dots kind of pop out from the page. I wrote the dates on top of the circles and made a small calendar in the upper left corner, and below that I made little sections for notes and to-dos. The only thing that bothers me about this spread is that I didn't write the notes a bit lower. Now it's super close to the calendar. I drew a box for each day and ended up fixing some of the ones I made first because there was too much space in between the box and the center of the page in my opinion. Luckily with the Gelly Roll pen, mistakes like this are easy to fix. When the layout itself was done, I taped the right side of the spread and painted a little owl here. I wanted to create this dreamy sunset type of background, and I'm so happy with how this painting turned out, and I might as well say I think this is one of my favorites, if not my favorite painting I've ever done. So I took this pink or peachy tone and painted like half of the background with it, and then took some white gouache and blended it to the color above to create a gradient. First, it was my idea to paint some frosty grass here in the bottom part, but I loved how simple but effective it was just like this, so I left the background plain. I painted the owl sitting on a little dry tree branch. I painted the bottom of the branch darker and made the top part look like some dry bark of the tree that's almost coming off. I added some darker details for the branch to make it look more organic. I peeled the washi so I could make the branch continue on the page, and I think that gave the spread a bit more interesting look. I actually ended up painting the owl with gouache instead of watercolors this time, and I think I could have done the same for all my paintings before this too. I started with the body part and I went with very light colors. I painted the part below the wing a tiny bit darker and then just blended it to the lighter area below that. I was so confused when I started to paint the wings because owls have so many layers to their wings and their patterns on them are so confusing. First, I just again did the base color for all of the different wing parts and added some lines and little shadows on them. I started adding the white dots to the wings and tail. It's so hard to explain what I'm doing here, but I would highly recommend actually looking at a real picture of an owl if you want to paint one, because it's so much easier to understand the patterns and different layers and details. For the belly, I used white and light brown gouache to create some soft floof and made some more patterns with darker brown. This top layer was the most confusing one, but I just made these longer white thick lines, added some darker lines between and on top of them. The head of the owl was the most fun part of this painting. First, I made the heart-shaped frame for the face and added some darker brown and black above the middle part. I took white gouache and painted the left side of the head and took some really light gray and created some loose lines for the patterns on its head. I pretty much did the same for the face and just added some almost transparent details around the eyes and used a lot of water to blend everything. I painted the beak yellow and added black under and around it, blending it to the face. The eyes were so hard to make symmetrical, but I used some black gouache and fixed them later off camera, so now they are nicely symmetrical. Now that the painting is done, I just drew in the last little daily circle and added some graph paper in the lower left corner of the spread and rounded the corners of my Dutch door. And that's my December setup all done. I'm so happy with how this turned out in the end, and I really hope you enjoyed watching it even though this is again a long video. I hope you have the best holidays and December in general. Let's just quickly flip through all of these pages I just created. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Leave a thumbs up, and if you're still here, leave your favorite animal emoji down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching my video, and I hope to see you in my next one. Bye bye!